From the California State Senate, this is Senate Spotlight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Senate Spotlight, where we discuss legislative priorities, policy, and other related issues with members of the California State Senate. From the state capitol here in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green, and our guest this time around is freshman State Senator Marty Block, representing the 39th Senate District down in beautiful San Diego, parts of Coronado, Solana Beach. Welcome, sir. Glad to have you with us here on Senate Spotlight.
Great to be here, and I do represent a beautiful district.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And we'll talk a little bit more about that district, too. You are also the chair of the Senate Budget Subcommittee #1 on education. We can talk a little bit more about that, too, here. But first, let's just start with 2013, as we're talking to a lot of your colleagues that have appeared on this program. Starting to be quite a year, and actually a positive year in contrast from, I can even say, the last decade. And we certainly saw that manifested with Governor Brown's State of the State speech as we taped this. That was last week, and maybe by the time some folks see this, it's old news, but I think it still resonates that it was such a positive speech in contrast to speeches about California from the last few years. You've seen a few yourself, being a former assembly member. Give me your take on it. What did you think?
Yeah, I got here 4 years ago in 2008 as a new assemblyman, and our first order of business was to cut $50 billion from the state budget. And Governor Schwarzenegger and then Governor Brown, when he was elected, were appropriately pessimistic because times just weren't good. The governor's attitude showed that California is now on the right track. It was an end to the gloom and doom.
And obviously, when he quotes French philosophers and the Bible and the little engine that could, you've got somebody there who's excited and ready to roll here.
That's right. I think I can.
Obviously, he put you and your colleagues, Democratic colleagues in particular, on notice that despite how much more positive things are looking fiscally here in California, to rein back a little bit on spending or even fighting, if you will, for certain funding of certain programs and the whole save for a rainy day thing. What do you say to that? Does that make sense to you and your Dem colleagues?
Well, there's a real tension there. We don't want to overreach, but on the other hand, we don't want to underreach either. We have so many Californians who've been hurting for such a long time now. We need to find the right balance.
And you are chair of Budget Sub-1, and for those who aren't familiar with legislative nomenclature, tell us what the Budget Subcommittee 1 is, and then we'll drill down a little bit on what that means to education funding.
Well, my committee handles education budget issues, and education is about half of the entire budget. And particularly this year, the governor has seemed to focus on education as an area of prime concern. So it'll be a very busy subcommittee. We work on K-12 issues, community college issues, and also the UC and CSU. And
as you said, this more stable funding, much more promise. California schools were really on a cliff, if you will, last fall. Thankfully to Prop 30, more funding coming in. It was the hard work and worry worth it at this point?
Yes, it was. I have a group of community college board members who came into town today, and we're finally talking about how to use a little bit of extra money to improve student success as opposed to where we're going to have to cut.
Well, the governor indeed talked about what he called a local control funding formula where the students' diverse needs are addressed in the specific districts. Obviously, you come from local government and from leadership in schools on the local level and in the statewide level. Tell us about what that means. Is that going to be effective? Is that the categoricals, I guess, getting rid of those? Does that
nobody knows better where need is in their hometown than people from that hometown. I think the governor's right on track when he says we give more power and flexibility to the locals. And I think the weighted funding formula for K-12 students is focusing the dollars where the need is, and that just makes sense.
The governor's also, one of the elements, I guess you could say, that's even bound to cause a fight was shifting more of the funds to school districts with large population of ESL learners, English as a second language, and also those with low-income districts. And it's essentially steering the money away from the wealthier districts. What do you think about that? Can the representatives from the wealthier districts, if you will, take a long view on where this money's going like that?
I hope they can. I represent San Diego Unified School District, which will certainly benefit from this focus funding. I also represent the Poway District, which is a fairly wealthy suburban area of San Diego. They will probably see less new money coming their way because of this. Now, it's important they won't be cut because of this, but they'll see less new money coming their way. They probably won't be happy about that, but I think the long view, it's clear. The governor said it. He said, treating those who are unequal equally isn't justice. And there are certainly greater needs in San Diego Unified than there are in Poway. So a differential in funding is appropriate.
The governor, in addition to the funding, wants more accountability with it, a district plan for students' achievements. That theory and that notion really isn't new here in California. We've been talking about it for a long time, but will that pass muster with this legislature as everybody battles for that piece of budget pie?
Well, everybody agrees on the need for more accountability. What people don't agree on is how exactly you measure what's student success and how you do it fairly from districts that are very different from one another. So that's going to be the battle. I think we're going to move in the direction the governor wants us to move, but we've got to be fairly careful how we tread.
Well, it's interesting to think as we talk about this that how much of a blessing it is to have more money, but with that does come further intense debate.
Right, and in the colleges as well, and that's part of what I'll be doing in the Education Subcommittee. We're looking at community colleges now who aren't sure, that their transfer rates aren't very good right now. Completion rates aren't very good. So they're looking at how do we best enhance student success, what can we do to help students succeed, and then make sure we hold colleges accountable for making sure their students are successful.
Well, you were on the Community College Board of Trustees in your district before joining the legislature, and you mentioned community colleges really were hurt with the hard budget cuts over the last couple of years. Limited course options, taking longer to graduate. Do you see a healing process going on in community colleges with this?
Yeah, they're looking forward to it. Community colleges will receive more funding this year than they've gotten in the last 5 or 6 years. They will look at some new programs, new student success programs. For example, having students work with counselors before they start their first semester. Right now, most students don't get to see counselors until they're well into their academic program and they've wasted some units along the way. There will be mandatory orientations if funded by this budget for students in community colleges. That will also help students be successful because they'll know when they start what they need to achieve.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring that up because there was a new study that came out from a national commission this last week. It was called the National Commission on Higher Education Attainment, one of a couple of studies that have dealt with this, calling for reforms on the way we as a country serve what is being called this changing college population. It used to be 18 to 21-year-olds graduating from high school, whether they go to the 4-year or to a 2-year, they're on their way to a degree. But nowadays, fast forward to 2013, it's people struggling with one or more jobs, single parents, older students, veterans, and many of the students, almost half of them, as you know, that begin trying to go to a degree, drop out or just can't afford it or just can't do it. And they're essentially talking about changing the way that we educate the higher ed students. Do you think that that change is needed and this maybe a system of accountability for the higher eds like we have for K through 12?
Well, I think both a change in how we educate and a change in how we hold accountable are necessary. For example, we're hopefully going to see more online education. The governor stressed that in some of his remarks. We can be more cost efficient in teaching some of our courses to large numbers of students online than having them have face-to-face instruction in a classroom. Some disciplines are not good for online education. Mm-hmm. You need the face-to-face, you need the close, tactile almost, touch between the student and the faculty member. Other disciplines like math, some of the hard sciences, you can do more in an online setting. We also, in terms of accountability, students drop out for a number of reasons from community colleges. Some do it because of financial hardship, they just have to leave. Some do it because they only wanted, when they came in, a 6-month certificate. Now they can go out and get a better job. So we need to be careful in terms of what we consider success and failure.
And you also have students now who are dealing with burdens of financial aid and paying it off in the outer years, but not going through and getting the degree, which puts them in a worse situation than if they hadn't gone to college at all. You want to talk about that and some possible issues to address that?
Well, access and affordability are two keys. We're going to provide more access with more funding now. The governor is also requiring the colleges, both UC, CSU, and the community colleges, to keep their tuition and fees steady. So we won't have the affordability concerns we've had in the past. It's important for students, for families, to be able to plan on their educational expenditures through the time to graduation, and this will let them plan more effectively.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. That is really going to be a tremendous relief for students here in California and others that come to our prestigious universities. And the governor said in his address the other day, I love the way he put it, I will not have students be the default financiers of our colleges and universities. That's going to make a tremendous difference right away, isn't it?
It will. It will Say students, when they start a 4-year program or a 2-year program, will know what the total cost will be. There won't be hidden costs.
Okay. Irony here is not to be what they call a negative Nancy here on this, but we're still 49th out of 50 in per pupil spending here in California. So obviously we still have a long way to go. Talk about that a little.
And that's why we have to be more efficient. We have to make sure that online courses are used if appropriate. We have to make sure that students get the counseling so they don't take courses they don't need. We just have to make sure we get the bang for every taxpayer buck we spend because, as you say, we have fewer bucks per capita than other states.
It'll be interesting to have you come back here in the next 6 months or so and see where we are with the spending and the debate and the discussion on this. So it'll be great. Let's go local. Let's talk about the City of San Diego and the County of San Diego. You were chair in the assembly of the Select Committee on San Diego Trade, Tourism, and Job Creation. Talk about a priority-focused committee. As California goes, so goes San Diego, I assume. Obviously, economic effects to the citizens down there, to jobs in the economy. And you held a hearing last fall on the potential fiscal effects of the federal budget cuts. We're off the federal fiscal cliff, but there's obviously still some concern. Talk about that.
Well, we're not really off the cliff. We've taken a step back from the cliff, but we could still go over if the federal government doesn't act appropriately. The debt ceiling could have major implications for San Diego and the rest of the state of California. But San Diego, while it's typical of the state in some respects, is different in terms of its dependence on federal dollars, even more dependent than most of the state. Large military complex. Between the military, the defense industry, about a quarter of San Diego's jobs, 1 out of every 4, is linked to federal defense spending. So if there is a problem down the road, San Diego will feel it first and most.
Did San Diego feel the effects first a decade ago when the Cold War was over and the closures were happening?
Certainly, when the aerospace industry went down the tubes, San Diego's economy suffered greatly, and it took many years to recover.
And do you think as this state heals here in this next year, San Diego's going to be the beneficiary of that too?
Absolutely. I mean, San Diego, on the other hand, it depends a lot on federal funding, but on the other hand, it has certain natural resources. The tourist industry that you can't match anywhere else in the state or the nation. So San Diego can bounce back and will. California
still is such a divided state. As much as we all consider ourselves unified here, we're still divided. And at one point, if you, I'm sure, remember in local government, we were going to divide this state in two 10 or 15 years ago, a North California and a South California. There's still battles over water, the Southern California share of whatever fiscal pie there is, whether it's education or social services. Let me just sort of ask you, get philosophical here as we wrap up. How can we come together to make this state not so divided? That the folks in Northern California can care that San Diego is more than just Legoland and SeaWorld, and the folks in San Diego can care that Northern California is more than just the Golden Gate and the state capitol. How can we unify? How can we be proud of our independence as elements of the state, but be dependent on each other?
Well, the need is to recognize that we are interdependent and that, frankly, San Diego needs water and other resources from Northern California, but Northern California needs Southern California's jobs, for example, our workforce. The Silicon Valley companies are doing very well. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they hire many of their employees come from Southern California, from UCLA, from Berkeley, from University of California, San Diego, the population centers. So we feed workers to the north feeds water to us. We all are fed by the agriculture in the east. So it is an interdependent state, and I think most people realize that. I think H.L. Mencken once said that the solution to most problems is very simple, but it's wrong. And dividing the state is one of those simple but incorrect solutions.
It sounds like we all need to do a better job of, I guess you could say, our own regional PR of letting the other people know, hey, we're giving you something too in return for what you share. So
I think you're probably right.
Well, sir, thank you. We're about out of time here. A lot more we can discuss. Hope to have you back as bills come up and things become more of a reality here for you this semester, this assembly session, and have you back for other issues. So thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, Senator Marty Block from the 39th Senate District representing San Diego County. And that is it for this edition of Senate Spotlight. We invite you to join us next time around as we discuss important legislative issues and policies with the newsmakers and newsbreakers of the California State Senate. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Senate Spotlight.